Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and hold on, let me just fix this camera real quick because the lighting is really bad. As you can see, I'm currently using a new podcast room because the one that I usually use, that you usually see the background with the big Q in, it's not working. So it's not working right now. There's people in use, so I can't use it right now, unfortunately. This is the other room that we have. Special thanks to Quinnipiac University School of Business for allowing me to use this podcast for the time being. I'll fix the lighting eventually, like once I get settled in and I realize that this might be a spot where I have to record and a spot where I have to do my shows. But in the meantime, let's get going with the three segments that we have queued up. We're going to talk about, first we're going to talk about Joel Embiid losing his MVP in the most recent Warriors game. He left with an injury. I'm going to talk about that. Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu is officially on. If you watched one of my shorts, you know that they broke the news the minute after I ended the segment yesterday. So I'm going to talk about that. And then, as always, I'm going to give a quick recap of the games. We also have a fourth segment as well, so be sure you stick around for that and figure out exactly what it is. I ask that you remember to follow and to subscribe to the show if you enjoy. And as always, let me just pull it up real quick. Please remember to, if you enjoy this episode, please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. As always, the link will be on the display at the ticker or at the bottom of the show, in the bottom of the show segment, or in the link in the description. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Helps makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. That's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And without further ado, let us go ahead and begin with our first topic, which is Joel Embiid and the most recent game with Golden State. So far, Joel Embiid ended the game with an injury, and he also finally put an end to his scoring streak of scoring 30 points consecutively over 22 games. That's how much he held it for. The only other player that had more consecutive games with 30 points was Wilt. Obviously, no one is going to be able to, it's very difficult to break any of Wilt's scoring records because, he's a freak of nature. So obviously, this is really impressive, even though he's not the first. He left the game with 4 minutes left in the fourth with what appears to be a hyperextended knee. And since he's already missed 12 games this season, we don't know we still don't know how severe this injury really is. Because the official report it hasn't come out yet. That's only what it looks like. It looks hyperextended, but we don't know for sure. And with Joel Embiid missing 12 games already this season, he has a chance, or there's a possibility of him not meeting the criteria for being the MVP. And therefore, for now, I believe he has about 10 or 12 days in order to recover before he reaches that 65-game threshold. And once he goes below that, he can't win the MVP. Therefore, Jokic, Shai, and Giannis are going to be your top three in the MVP voting for this year. I think the award right now, it looks like it's going to go to Jokic by default, assuming that Joel Embiid doesn't come back from his injury early. I think this award is going to go to Jokic. Shai does have a case, even in the games where they lose, he tends to show up and he's always been consistent. So there's a chance that he might end up overcoming Jokic in that sense. There's also a chance that Giannis will also be doing the same thing. I'll get to that a little bit later. Let's talk about Joel Embiid. Now, before I rip on him a little bit, let's talk about the winner's side of this game. So this was a much-needed win for Golden State after their recent loss to the Lakers in double overtime. Curry played great with 37 points on 12 of 17. So did Andrew Wiggins, going 8 for 10 with 23 points, and Jonathan Kuminga also ended with 26. Obviously, these star players did their part in helping this team get a win. They're 2 games below Houston, who is right below the play-in tournament. So beating a good team like Philly with Joel is definitely a confidence booster. Now, Joel Embiid might have looked injured like throughout the entire game, but still, like Joel Embiid is their best player. So beating them with their best player is still a confidence booster, and you really have to give credit to while Steph Curry and like the others that I mentioned before, they played a great offensive game. You also have to give credit for Draymond and Steve Kerr and the great job that they did in the matchup with Joel Embiid. Draymond Green, like I mentioned before, like how a lot of people don't really like Draymond Green because of his play style and because of how dirty he is, but it is games like this that like sort of define him. Like Joel Embiid was held to 14 points on 5 of 18 with 8 turnovers and the worst plus minus in the game. So as the haters always say, he's in playoff mode already. This isn't new for Draymond, however, doing these type of things to dominant centers. He does this type of thing all the times, all of them. And well, I can't really say all the time because there are times where the offense is better than the defense. But most of the time, Draymond plays elite defense against a lot of great centers, and this is why the Warriors have him on this roster. This game literally showed why, like, his value. He had the second highest box plus minus in this game with 18, even though he was 3 of 8 from the field with 9 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. Like, those stats don't sound like positive box plus minus stats, but he gets box plus minuses like these all the time while putting up mediocre numbers like this. And the two players like above him, the same as him, Kuminga and Curry, were the two best scorers in the starting lineup. So he was tied with the second best scorer on his team with box plus minus. Like, that really shows his value that he brings to the team offensively, and the value that he brings, not offensively, defensively, and the value that he brings on like playmaking on the offensive side of the ball. That's what I meant by offensively. I had to make sure that like he's not really scoring the ball. Don't ever catch me saying that he's a good scorer. And the argument might have been like, how many free throws did Joel Embiid shoot? Because he only had 14 points. And if you're guessing they were low, you'd be correct. He got fouled only once this entire game. And knowing Embiid and like his play style and how he gets a lot of these foul calls like that he arguably like shouldn't, many people would like hear that and like immediately assume that like the refs were a bit one-sided. Like the fans would immediately assume that because Joel Embiid and these calls, they're ghost calls some of these times. Like he doesn't even have to get touched to get these calls. The refs have been like but that's a whole different topic. I'm not going to elaborate on that. So like, what happened? But like, because the Sixers ended up shooting more free throws than the Warriors. So what happened this game? Were the lights too bright for him? Like, I think like a big part definitely played in the lack of free throws. Say what you want, but free throws are like what help him score. And with the amounts he usually takes, because he takes 12 a game, he would have ended this game with 26 points if he would have taken his regular amount of free throws. So it's like, obviously he hunts for them, and that kills him a lot because if he doesn't get the foul calls when he just flails his body around for no reason, then he would have just flailed his body around literally for no reason. And because of that greatly like that could affect the team going deep into the playoffs because like he's not hunting to score, so he's hunting to get fouled. So it's like, why is he hunting to get fouled? You shouldn't be hunting for that. Like that's not something that should be done whatsoever. Like you should look to score. Joel only made like it was bad. It was really bad for him. He hunts for them all the time. At the half, the game was really close. But then the flip switch. Joel only made. Then this is why I mentioned that the lights might not have been bright. The lights might have been a little too bright for him, because the flip switch once the third quarter hit. Joel Embiid only made 2 shots in that third quarter, scoring 5 points. Everything else from him was either a foul, a turnover, or a missed shot. It shows that like why the mid-range game is so frowned upon a lot by analytics and stats people, because like these type of shots that he takes aren't what you traditionally call good shots. They tend to be contested mid-ranges, fadeaway mid-ranges, all types of mid-ranges. It's a very useful tool to have in your bag, but not something that should be used as a crutch on the offensive side of the ball. it gives you the exact same points as a layup, but the shot is much farther. And with the way Embiid plays, he makes the shots a lot more difficult. Obviously, like, he's so good to the point where he's turned that type of shot into a good shot. But for him, when the shot isn't knocking down, it seriously hurts your team, especially when he takes such a high volume of them. You essentially wasted a possession by throwing the ball up in someone's face while he's, like, contesting you, and you're making the shot 10 times more difficult by fading away and being farther away from the basket. Obviously, if you make it, good job, but it's one of those high risk, low reward type of deals, which is why a lot of teams would rather take twos strictly in the paint to ensure that they can score those points, or take a three-pointer if they have to back up a little bit and the paint isn't there. What makes it all worse for him is that throughout the game, like, it looked like the Sixers, like, they played much better basketball as a team without Embiid. Like, when he was sitting out of the game, he sat out a majority of the first half of the fourth due to, like, being in a bunch of foul trouble. But before he got subbed out, the team was losing 80-66. But once that bench came in, they started to rally and they started to share the ball amongst each other. They started to play really good team basketball, moving the ball, playing great defense, converting on fouls. There was a point where they even flashed a full court press on Golden State and it forced a turnover. And they also even tried going into 2-3. Like, the rotations for Nick Nurse in this game and the coaching and the game plan, like, he sent everything that he could possibly send on Golden State. I thought it was great, like, how the team was able to, like, rally when Embiid, like, was sitting out, and they were able to provide very good offense for the team and very good defense for the team as well. And I should mention that this happened, some of this definitely happened while Steph Curry wasn't on the floor. So if they decided to take full advantage of the situation and rally the Warriors, like, they took advantage of the situation right when Steph Curry was sitting out. But he wasn't sitting out the entire time, obviously, because he wasn't in foul trouble. But the Warriors ended up calling a timeout in the fourth, and the score was 93-90. So the bench was able to go on a huge run to end up almost tying the game back up. But then after the timeout, Joel Embiid comes right back into the lineup. And then the game plan completely shifted back to him getting the ball every single possession and running the isolation in the low post. Why? Why do you do that? That wasn't working. And, like, what you were doing before was working. Stick to the game plan that was working for your team rather than running isolations with Embiid in the low post every single time. I understand, like, why they did it, like, trying to get him going in the fourth quarter because you need your best player to show up in the fourth. Not to mention the idea of Joel having the ball and then him getting doubled, which means someone would be open for a good shot, is generally a good strategy. And can't forget the whole trust the process, where it's like, okay, like, we might be slow now, but give it a minute, like, trust the process, all that stuff. But there comes a time in sports where sometimes your best player doesn't have to be the best player of the night. And that's okay. Like, that's because we're all human. That there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. It's a team sport for a reason, and the team was playing well when they were playing like a team. So that strategy was working. Shifting that strategy while they were going on that run after the timeout completely killed their momentum. You want to know what the rest of the possessions were like for the Sixers after that? I'll give you 10 of them. Joel Embiid missed a three-pointer. Joel Embiid made a technical free throw, making the score 91-98. Joel Embiid turnover. Tobias Harris miss. Joel Embiid turnover. Joel Embiid turnover again. This one led to a foul, which made the score 91-104. House makes his free throws. Oubre makes his layup. Joel Embiid turnover, and then Joel Embiid gets injured. Half of those possessions in the span that I just told you were directly caused by Joel Embiid and his terrible passing and his terrible decision-making and his turnovers and his bad shot selection. The team playing better without you is a bit concerning. They've done that in 2 of the 3 games since Joel decided to sit. Now, they lost all of those games, but one of those games was against the Denver Nuggets, being a great team. They played phenomenally, but obviously, like, the Denver Nuggets, they're the Denver Nuggets. It's a difficult team to beat. And then they put up a stinker against Portland. Like, obviously, I mean, like, you shouldn't really expect the bench to be that consistent especially when they were used to a specific play style with giving Joel Embiid the ball every single time. But they played well in two out of three of these games, in my personal opinion. Then again, the argument could have been like, oh, Joel had a bad night. But this is why ISO-heavy lineups who rely on players who like want the ball every single time could backfire. And in games like this is where people would rather flock to Jokic's side and say that they would rather have Jokic as a center because of these types of situations that Joel was in. Like if you put Jokic on that field and he was getting doubled like how Joel Embiid was against Golden State, he would have feasted on the assists, in my opinion. Because like isolation, while it's difficult to stop on your own, it's also the most difficult offense to run on your own. If the team figures out a way to like slow you down or to stop it, where does the team go next? So do they just keep doing the same thing every time until it doesn't work, until it works, even though it doesn't work? Like that's literally the definition of insanity. So they stumbled into that problem with this game, with Joel Embiid being completely off of his game. Like they should have realized that he was off his game and now wasn't like it was just a bad game for him, but they needed to find something else to go to. And they did, but then when Joel Embiid went back in, they just went back to what wasn't working, which I just don't understand. But now that I finished about the game, what does this mean for the Sixers? Well, I think Joel Embiid is going to is not going to win the MVP. So now to avoid any more scrutiny, he has to make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Severity of his injury, like we don't know about it yet, but the Sixers might be in trouble. With these recent losses, they moved all the way down between the 5th, and it's obviously like that is from jumping down from the 3rd all the way to the 5th is really bad. It's a big problem for Philly. They must have the high seed lock. They have to. They absolutely have to have that high seed. If they get into the bottom half of the playoff bracket, then they might face off against much more difficult competition in the first round, and you don't want that as if you are Philly, you definitely don't want that because of Joel Embiid and his bugaboos in the postseason. At least in my personal opinion, like it's very important that Philly can keep trying to win and like they keep winning to keep their with the lineup that they have to keep their record good enough so that way they can ensure a 3 seed at least, or maybe even a 4 seed. They would much prefer to have their 3 seed so that way they can go up against a little bit less of a competition, so that way they can make it all the way to the next round. But still, they definitely don't want to drop all the way down to like 8 or like 7. They do not want that. That is bad news. So far, the process has not been a success for the Sixers. But we'll see later. Again, we don't know the severity of Joel Embiid's injury, and we are running out of time for this first segment, so I will be right back after the short break where we talk about Stephen Curry and Sabrina Ionescu matching up in the three-point competition for All-Star break. So I'll get back to you.
Be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. different angle. I try to switch it up, see if I could like make the lighting a little bit better, see like which sides to sit on because there's 4 seats in here. So obviously like still trying to learn like which seats are the best because this is the first time that I use the podcast room. So please bear with me on that, folks. Last week, so actually before I begin with that, pardon me for that, but as always, I remind you guys to please remember to tip and to donate. Really makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. The link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. The link is in the description, and the link is also in the ticker below. As always, once again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And with that, let us go ahead and begin with the second segment, which is Stephen Curry going up against Sabrina Ionescu during All-Star break. So I mentioned in the fourth segment of one of my podcasts of last week, talking about how Stephen Curry hinted at a possibility of challenging the woman who holds the WNBA three-point record. Or actually, no, not the WNBA. There we go. That's actually much better lighting. Hold on. All right. There we go. Figured it out. Figured out how I want to sit. Thank you. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Recently, Stephen Curry was caught on the sidelines in the shoot-around, asking to see like who holds the three-point shooting contest record, and it turns out to be a WNBA player, Sabrina Ionescu. She holds the record for most points in a three-point shooting contest, not just for NBA, but for the WNBA, not just for WNBA, but for NBA as well, which is very, very, very impressive. If you are, Jesus, this lighting is so bad, it's not even funny. Of course, they did the right after my podcast from yesterday. They made this an official thing for the team and for the All-Star break. Of course, they did it right after my podcast. It's just the timing is just the worst. I cannot stand it. It's so unlucky. And they came up with a format and everything. They'll follow the standard three-point shooting contest rules of 4 ball racks with the money ball at the end. An all money ball rack, along with 2 Sari ranged deep threes. Like, you know, those are the ones where you shoot like at the hash, the deep threes. The game ball is worth 1, the money ball is worth 2, and the deep 3 is worth 3. So Steph will shoot from the NBA 3-point line and use an NBA ball, while Sabrina will use a WNBA ball and use the WNBA 3-point line. At least that's what the format on ESPN had planned. Sabrina had other ideas, however. She followed up with another tweet saying, "I'll use the NBA 3-point line," which would eliminate all the WNBA haters. Like, she used the WNBA ball and she shot closer. Like, you know how they'd get. But so we will see if like the NBA decides to like release another report right after this podcast saying, she will be using the NBA 3-point line because she's accepted to do so. I'm personally very excited for this matchup. This will be the first time ever where there's any type of competition between NBA and WNBA players. And it's about time, honestly. Like, the WNBA players have been arguing for years about how they deserve similar revenue with the money that they're making in the league, and this brings in a lot of question, and like a lot of people don't necessarily like agree with it simply because of like how the WNBA plays. Like, when guys play, like I know a lot of people like they don't go to the games, like to the WNBA games, but instead of blaming like the league for not like playing you, why don't you just blame the fans for not like supporting you? Like, here's my problem. I'm in college, obviously, like you guys know that, and I have a lot of I go to a lot of sporting events here. When the guys play, I see like all of their friends like in the stands cheering for them. Even when the sport might not be popular, all of their friends are still there to root for them every step of the way. And obviously, like, if you're good, more people are going to notice this and more people are going to show up. But when I go to women's games, I don't see any of their friends like in attendance whatsoever. Like, I see a few of them, yeah, but like they already play a women's sport, so it doesn't really count because they already get how like the viewerships of these games and crowd attendances are a bit meh. So it's like it's I don't really want to say it doesn't count, but at the same time it sort of doesn't, because they understand. Like, why aren't women friends going to support their fellow women in these games? Like, there's also the stereotype that like women aren't as fun to watch as the men, and just going off of what I typically see, like from what I see from WNBA basketball, it wasn't that particularly fun to watch. And there isn't really like any highlight plays that go on in those games and like that are being made in those games. And the fact that like a lot of them can't dunk is also a major entertainment factor that is just completely lost like for basketball. Like, dunking is a major part of basketball, and a lot of fans like to see dunks, especially old heads. And they love it when like someone just dunks over a huge defender like that's just sitting in the paint. And it doesn't matter, like, he just soars over him. But in the WNBA, they can't do that, which is a little bit of a vibe kill, if you ask me. Like, because I would really love to see a woman just go up and throw down a dunk right over any center's head. Like, it's very odd seeing a layup on a wide open fast break, and I'm used to seeing nice dunks, or just any dunk, really. I think Caitlin Clark coming into this she's going to be their messiah, so eventually, like, viewership will pick up. And that's another thing not present in the WNBA, which is a player who could take over a game like her and put up ridiculous stats like her. Like, you don't really have many highlight level players like in the WNBA, if that makes sense. Like, you don't really see these ridiculous box scores in the WNBA like you do in the NBA. So that's another major entertainment factor, because it's like these players are doing something that like no one has ever seen before in the NBA, but like the WNBA is sort of like, it's remaining the same. But this talk about the NBA and WNBA athletes has been going on for years. Like, it's been going on for a while. It dates all the way back to 7 years ago when Brittany Griner said that she could beat DeMarcus Cousins in a 1v1. I'm sure a lot of people who didn't just start watching NBA like recently know exactly like what I'm talking about, because this did happen 7 years ago. If you don't remember what happened, what the league was like 7 years ago, I'll remind you real quick. This is Prime Boogie. This is I can't move my head down because they won't see me. This is Prime Boogie. This is the undisputed best center in the league, Boogie. This is 27 and 11 per game, Boogie. And she thinks that she can beat him in a 1v1. Obviously, every NBA athlete was taking Cousins aside. KD was like, I like the confidence, BG, but I don't think that's going to happen. And Cousins said, I'm glad she's confident in her abilities, but it's also a little delusional. So you might say there's a lot of like bias with these NBA players, but the real crazy part is when the WNBA coach said this. If there was no referee, I'm going to go to the ATM, I'm going to sell my house, and I'm going to put all my money on DeMarcus Cousins. This was the WNBA coach. This was the WNBA, not WNBA, the Women's USA basketball coach that said this to a reporter that was questioning them about like these about her claim. This was her coach. So the fact that her coach said this really speaks on the talent that DeMarcus Cousins had at the time and the amount of talent that these NBA players have compared to WNBA players. Like, he is that confident in DeMarcus Cousins being able to beat her. I thought it was insane, but he is a coach, so he knows more about basketball than a lot of people do. So he won 2 gold medals for Team USA. So he knows his stuff. With all of this in mind, like, this matchup will be huge. Like, Steph Curry's oh god, the lights just went out. Hold on, give me 1 second. It's weird. I guess they thought no one was in this room. Wow. Anyways, back to what I was saying. If Steph ends up losing this game, like, this could seriously damage his legacy. Like, really, really damage his legacy. Like, he has that reputation of like the greatest shooter on planet Earth and the greatest shooter that God made. So if he loses to WNBA player, like I'm not gonna say like it's bad because like you can lose to anyone. There's nothing wrong with losing, but it's like it's just going if he lost to anyone in the league, it's like it's going to damage him. Like and not only that, but if Steph does end up losing, which I don't think he will, this could bring in a surge of like WNBA viewers. Like this might bring a lot of attention. Like, wow, this woman was able to beat Stephen Curry in a 3-point contest. That's amazing. And like they'll all just go ahead and like they'll tune into the games. And with Caitlin Clark coming in, this is just the beginning. Like she'll spark what makes like she'll spark other WNBA athletes and like other women to like try to play as a sport and try to compete with her and like increase the overall skill level of these WNBA teams. Maybe even expand the league. Like who knows? Let me know in the comments who you guys have winning this contest. My money's on Steph, though not to completely talk down on the WNBA or its athletes. She does hold the record for the most points in the 3-point shootout. So we'll see if it was just her night or if she's really like that. Then again, Steph could also just randomly start missing. I don't think that will happen given by what I saw from him last year. That was just unbelievable shooting from him. And like I think what would be a really crazy ending is if they both end up tying and they both end up like sharing the win. Like that would be really cool. But I also heard a hot take from someone saying that Steph might just let her win to just increase like the WNBA viewership. I don't think that's gonna happen because like I think that they really want to find out like who's the better shooter, and it's fun. It's like it's for All-Star Weekend. Like this is great. Like I feel like we should do like I feel like the league should do more of this. Obviously, like they wouldn't do like I don't think they would do like a full NBA team versus a full WNBA team. I wish, but maybe maybe a 3-on-3. Like I know that they have like the Big Three show where they do 3v3 basketball. So maybe for All-Star break they could do like a 3-on-3. Who knows? Like that would be really cool to see. But with that, we are out of time for the second segment. I'm going to be taking a short break once again, and I will see you in the third segment where I go ahead and I recap the rest of the games that happened from last night and see if there is a better spot to sit in this room. So I will be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
There we go. That's much better. And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Sorry for that longer than usual break. Once again, was trying to just trying to get my setup properly set up and make sure that I had good enough lighting. And it turns out this is the best spot to sit in the podcast room. So I appreciate your patience and bearing with me. Finally found a good spot. So this is where I'll be sitting for now. And let's go ahead and break into the third segment of this podcast, where we talk about the recap of last night's games. Now, Lakers lost yet again, this time to the Hawks. Anthony Davis was out for this game, so it makes complete sense how the team failed to show up, and it makes complete sense how the Lakers end up losing, because they can't do anything without LeBron or Anthony Davis on the court at the same time. Everyone except LeBron, who had 21, 8, and 9, and Austin Reeves failed to show up. Austin Reeves had 28 points, but D'Lo finally had a bad game where he didn't show up offensively, and that might have played a big part in this blowout, along with Anthony Davis's injury. Well, not injury, but Anthony Davis sitting out. Obviously, this is really bad if you're the Lakers. The Lakers are in a terrible spot right now. Rui Hachimura, again, with another great game, but barely getting 20-plus minutes. And he ended with 16 points on 7 for 11. He needs more minutes. He clearly is playing like it, and I don't understand what the Lakers are doing. He wants these minutes, and he deserves these minutes. It's like, what is he doing? And he needs more minutes. The Hawks played great ball all around, shooting over 50, 40, 80 from the field. DeJounte and Trae Young were great. DeJounte had 24, and Trae Young had 26. Sadiq Bey had 18. Jalen Johnson had 19, and Capella had 13. So all the starters in double figures. Obviously, the team suffered defensively without having Anthony Davis. And whenever the Lakers, as I said several times before, and I said several times in several other episodes, when they don't have LeBron or Anthony Davis, obviously they are going to lose. And that is just a very big problem that this team has, because I don't think they can go anywhere at this point with this roster. Jackson Hayes, of all people, was in the starting lineup. Why doesn't Darvin put Roy in the lineup? It doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, Darvin Ham was trending on Twitter, saying fire Darvin Ham. That was trending on Twitter again. So it's only a matter of time at this point when, at least for my opinion, I think he's done. It makes absolutely no sense how Jackson Hayes got the starting spot over Rui Hachimura, and Roy was still able to put up much better production than him. It is bad. It is bad coaching, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. So, but I went on a little tangent, and I go on these tangents every time because it is the same thing every single year. It is all the time. But LeBron also got caught. I just want to mention that recently I looked at LeBron. He got caught tweeting an hourglass after the game. He also recently, I believe he recently sponsored with DraftKings. More on that maybe in another segment. But what does this mean? The hourglass tweet? Nobody knows. Maybe it could mean that he's running out of time. Or maybe it could mean that Darvin Ham is also running out of time. Hold on, let me just sit up a little bit closer. It might mean that he's out of time or he's running out of time. It might be that Darvin Ham's running out of time, or that a trade is coming soon, or that he's hinting that the trade deadline is coming up soon. So that way he's going to come in and start making trades. The whole meme, La GM, he might be coming in to go and talk about these trades. The trade deadline ends the 10th of February, so they need to get to it. Obviously, you guys know that I'm a big LeBron fan, so I might as well go ahead and recap, go back on the point where I was saying, it's every single season with this guy, with his teams. Every single season, I have to watch LeBron's immense talents get wasted by either incompetent teammates or an incompetent front office. Nobody on the team is blameless, but nobody on the team can play. And I'm not going to scrutinize the oldest player in the NBA who's averaging a consistent and efficient 25, 7, and 7. I'm not going to do that. And you're obviously going to have a bunch of haters that are going to do that, but it's he's the oldest player in the league, and he's been doing this since he was 18. What more can you expect from him? Not to mention the fact that if he doesn't put up numbers like this, he almost for sure loses the game. these Lakers aren't going anywhere. Either they will miss the play-in again, lose in the play-in and miss the playoffs again for the third time in 6 years with a LeBron James in his prime. Yes, LeBron is in his prime. I do not care what anyone says. He's averaging prime numbers, if not better than what he did before. No, he is in his prime. Do not question me on that. And at this point, LeBron, I think he needs to get out of LA. Like, he has to get out of LA. It is inexcusable that you missed the playoffs for 3 years with LeBron. Inexcusable. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened since he was a rookie, and it shouldn't have happened here. Inexcusable. And it's not his fault, because look at what he's averaging in these games. They've been the worst at creating a roster and maintaining one good enough to make some noise. I think he needs to get out of LA, like now. And I think he should request a trade to go back to Cleveland so that everybody is happy. And they have a good amount of fans. Like, a good amount of fans on the Lakers are just Kobe fans who don't like LeBron and want him off the team. That's a wide margin of some of the fan bases. Or he could pull a Tom Brady, say, "Oh, I'm going to retire," and then he comes back and he signs, and whatever team he signs with maintains all the players, so that way they don't have to do a trade. This might harm his legacy, however, but at this point, LeBron is just wasting his time over in LA. Like, he should be winning titles. He should be competing in playoffs right now. But now he has to deal with an incompetent front offense and an incompetent bench and an incompetent starting lineup. Like, no. 20 plus years doing this. It's unbelievable. But regardless, back onto the rest of the games. The Knicks recently beat the Jazz in a blowout win, 118-103. With these last couple of wins under the Knicks' belt, they moved all the way up to the 3rd seed. And the 3rd seed, as a New York fan, I mean, I'm a Nets fan, obviously, but like, I don't hate on New York teams because, I have to represent. This is really cool. Like, we're living in an era where the Knicks and the Lions aren't depressed. I mean, now the Lions are depressed, but, during the regular season, they weren't that depressed. They're both really good. The Villanova legends went off tonight. DiVincenzo ended with 33, Jalen Brunson ended with 29, and Josh Hart ended with what I like to call a minimal triple-double, 10-10-10. And without Julius Randle, on top of that, I told you guys that the Knicks would be fine without him. Obviously, like, their 2 recent wins came against teams that aren't on, like, one of the top teams. So, like, we'll see how they match up against the Pacers tomorrow and see if there is a need to worry if the team will still remain as good as they have been. The Knicks do have a good defender in OG, so maybe that could counter some of the Pacers' offense and it could be slowed down just a little bit. Don't think so, because that offense does run at a high pace, but he could put a stop to some of the players here and there. This is a great year to be a Knicks fan. After their trade for OG, like, I think it's safe to say that they've become one of the teams to beat in the Eastern Conference. Like, they've been playing very, very good basketball. They are legit. And if you are the Jazz, however, obviously your team's like a little bit mediocre. So, like, they're fighting for a chance in the play-in spot right now. I don't see them making much noise if they do win. So they have good players on the team. They just still need to figure it out. And this isn't their year. That's for sure. This is not their year. I was talking about the Pacers before. I was talking about the Pacers, so I might as well bring up their game last night against the Boston Celtics, where they played the Celtics in the Celtics home court. Obviously, the Celtics ended up winning because they were playing at home. But the score was really close. It was 129-124. And listen to this. The Pacers had 108 shot attempts in this game, while the Celtics only had 87, and they lost. So they had so much more opportunities to score, and they still lost by 5 points. Like, the Pacers had way more shot attempts. It's amazing that Boston was somehow able to come up with the win, and it really speaks on just how good that Boston Celtics team really is. Like, the team had significantly more possessions than they did, but because of like their defense and because of like their offense being efficient when they needed it to be efficient, they were able to come out on top. And this is why they are the top team in the East and one of the teams to beat, and arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. Halliburton was back for this game, coming back from injury. However, he only played 22 minutes and he only had 13 and 10. He shot the ball very poorly from the field, going 5 for 16. Siakam ended the game with 23. Aaron Nesmith ended the game with 26. But all of the Celtics starters were in double figures, and they almost started with 20-plus points. Holiday and Porzingis were the only ones that didn't score over 20, but they had 17, so they were one three-pointer away. Derek White ended with 24, Jaylen Brown ended with 25, and Tatum ended with 30. Their defense, obviously, the Pacers' defense, when you allow the starting five to score this much, it's really inexcusable. Really inexcusable. Their defense is very, very suspect. And a team with bad defense is a team that I don't trust in the playoffs, because what if your offense doesn't show up? What if you're not hitting your shots tonight? What do you fall back on later in the game when you might need a big stop and you can't get anything going offensively? Where do you go? And Tyrese back and playing, this might as well I might as well go ahead and bring up how, in my opinion, that I don't think he's as good as a lot of the media has made him out to be. He's a great playmaker, phenomenal playmaker, and his shot selection, it's a lot better than what you'd expect from a typical point guard. But really, a lot of people give him a lot of praise for his playmaking, and they really like his passing. However, in my personal opinion, I do not think he should be over a player like Trae Young. Trae Young has been snubbed from the starting spot in the All-Star game so many times. He consistently averages 27 and 10 numbers, and he always ends the season being top 5 in assists. And he's only one of the league's best playmakers, along with Halliburton as well. But he's still averaging those numbers. A lot of people have recency bias and say Halliburton is better, which I just don't understand, because Trae Young has shown this consistency since he's entered the league. A lot of people say that the trade between the Hawks and the Mavs was incredibly one-sided because of how good Luka is, but Trae Young is also a really good basketball player. As a New Yorker, I hate him, but I don't like what he did with the Knicks and all that stuff, but it's he's a really good ball player. He's been playing at a very, very good level, a very elite level. And he's always been consistent every single time. So the fact that Dame and Halliburton were able to get the All-Star starting spot over him, it's a little bit unfair. And I just wanted to throw that out. Just wanted to throw that out there because throw my 2 cents. The Raptors also beat the Bulls in 118-107 game. There weren't that many games played. This is the last one. Two mediocre teams that aren't really competing for. I don't think they have a single shot in the East. Not a chance whatsoever. Not with those top 4 teams in the East. No chance. The Bulls didn't have Zach LaVine this night again with his injury, and because but every starter ended in double figures tonight. DeMar had 25. Ayo had 21. Two mediocre teams. It's why I saved this one for last. The big talk for the Bulls is that they might end up trading Zach LaVine, but we have no idea for who yet. I don't think they're trading for him because this isn't the first time that we've heard the Bulls are trading Zach LaVine. They do this all the time. And some sources speculate the Warriors could be a dark horse to get that trade. But again, I don't really see that happening. I think the Bulls, with this roster, is going to remain mediocre for this season. And until something changes for next season, it'll be the same story. The Raptors, on the other hand, I feel like they just need to get good chemistry. They just recently came off of a trade, getting RJ and the like. So I feel like they definitely need to build up that chemistry before I can legitimately say what their spot is. Obviously they're mid right now, but the recent trade, obviously they're going to be mid and they're going to be struggling because of the team being different, the chemistry not being there, all those type of things. So with that, we are out of time for this third segment. We are going to go and break into the fourth segment where I talk about the MVP ladder, considering how Joel Embiid is not going to be in it anymore after this week, in my opinion. So stay tuned for that after this short break. And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And we are going to be talking about the MVP ladder in this segment. This was the special segment that I was going to reveal now. And so far, obviously, given recent news and with Joel Embiid, he's probably not going to be in these talks for the future, given how he needs to meet that game eligibility. But here's the list as of right now. For number one, Jokic is now leading in the MVPs, so it's like he's projected to win this one right now. He's number one. Second is Joel Embiid. So obviously, like, those missed games definitely like took off some of his like talking points for him being better than Jokic. Same with his performance from last night. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being at third, Giannis being at fourth, Luka being at 5, Tatum being right below him. Then it's Tyrese. Then it's Sabonis, and then we have two new people that are in this this ladder right now: Jalen Brunson and Devin Booker. So that's honest. I'm honestly like very surprised to see Jalen Brunson in this particular ladder. Like, I'm very surprised because, like, I mean, I understand that the Knicks have been playing well, but at the same time, like, Jalen Brunson is not that strong on the defensive side of the ball. So and the same thing applies with Devin Booker. So I'm very surprised that I saw like both of these guys in this ladder, and especially Booker, because Booker has Kevin Durant on this team. So the fact that he's able to go to rise that quickly, like with those games in the MVP ladder, that's pretty crazy in my opinion. So with the injury that Joel Embiid took, will he be eligible for the MVP? We don't know. So the 2 spot might be completely gone after he returns from his injury. We don't know what his injury status is. We don't know, but he has 12 days. If he doesn't get back in 12 days, then he's out of this list. The same thing, Tyrese Halliburton is also on the same boat. He was injured and he missed 13 games. So if he misses more than 4, he's out of this list as well. So let me know what you guys think about this 65 games requirements. Is it a good addition, or would you rather go back to the old format where like the 65 games didn't exist? Me personally, I think it's a great addition for like the MVP. It makes it a lot easier on the voters when they're like needing to choose, because like before with MVP voting and like how it was structured, it was really difficult to like pick exactly who was the best player on the best team when one of those players ended up missing a lot of games in the season due to either injury or due to load management. So it was very difficult for the voters to scale, like, which is more valuable. Like, obviously, like, your best ability is your availability, so that should also be considered and taken into value when talking about the MVP. But everyone's opinion and everyone's scale on like what's important is different. So now that there's a cap and like now that there's like a requirement for like what teams like they need this, like players need this in order to qualify for this, then I feel like this definitely like helps with the voters, because like it was difficult to scale. So now that there's a cap, it makes things much more simple. Like, did they meet the 65 game requirement? They did. Okay, cool. So, like, boom, that simple. Like, there's no need to debate. Just they made the 65 game requirement, and you're done. This is great to make sure that players don't sit out, and really have to give credit for Adam Silver with these ideas. Like, he's really like been adamant on making sure that a lot of these players stay in and play these games. Like, this is great. Like, Adam Silver, he's been making all of these moves. Like, it started with the play-in, how like he wanted, because that's essentially what the play-in was. It was a method to keep the rest of the star players playing in these games. Because if you're a 7, 8, 9, or 10 seed and you're trying to fight for a playoff spot, you'd want to play more games in the regular season so that way you could be higher up in the seed. Like, your best players want to play more games so that way they could be higher up in the seed, so that way they don't have to play in those play-in games. So, and again, and this is the same thing that's happening with like the NBA and their in-season tournament. that they added, and this has also been a thing that they've added with, I think it's the same thing applies with the 60-game cap. So I feel like these were great moves by Adam Silver, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for it. Actually, you know what he does? He just signed himself an extension. So, you know, I never understood why all of these players, like, they refuse to do their job, and they, like, refuse to play some of these games. It's a little selfish, in my opinion. Like, it ruins the competition by, like, adding asterisks, like, oh, this guy sat out, so this game doesn't count. And I feel like that just takes away from, like, the competition, because it's like you're taking away credit from a team that won simply because their best player chose to sit out, or for whatever reason, or like simply because your best player got injured. Like, we shouldn't really put an asterisk on it. Like, injuries are part of the game, and a win is a win, and you shouldn't put an asterisk on the fact on why the team won. Like, the team won simply because they were the better team, plain and simple, not because, oh, the other team didn't have their best player. But, like, I mean, obviously that's a factor, but it's more so because, like, that team that beat them is simply a better team. And I say selfish because a lot of these star players have fans who can't afford a ticket to watch an NBA game. They scrounge up enough money to be able to pay for a ticket or a place to stay if the game is away, just to see their favorite players play on the court for the first time. And then they later find out that he is going to be sitting out for no reason. Like, that is such, like, a vibe kill if you are a fan. And as an NBA player, I think you need to, like, take this into consideration when you're going into your games. That's why, like, I like Ant. He's one of those very few players in the league left with, like, the mentality of playing every single game. Kobe literally played with a broken finger. The only time he wouldn't play is if he couldn't walk. It was amazing watching him play every single game, even when he started to get older. On the other hand, I do understand why teams would do this to ensure that their players are healthy and rested for playoffs. This started with Kawhi and his load management, but it's become a problem to the point where everyone started to abuse it. Like, it was something that, this should have been something that is saved for late in the season when you already have a spot in the playoffs that you like, and a win or a loss doesn't necessarily matter. Like, that's understandable. But missing several games in a row towards the beginning of the season just because, like, you just don't want to play, or it's just unacceptable. Or, like, just because you want to, like, if you're able to play, you should be able to play. And it's sad when it does happen. But back to the MVP race itself, once Embiid is out of the top three, it'll be Shai, Giannis up there, and Jokic, who are going to be fighting for it. At this rate, I don't really think anyone is going to stop Jokic from winning this MVP unless Giannis just pops off randomly after All-Star break. I don't see this happening whatsoever. I think Jokic is going to run away with it, maybe even be the second player to win it unanimously. Who knows? Jokic averages are just, like, they're just way too good. He's averaging a near triple-double of 26, 12, and 9. Giannis's numbers are really close, however. He averages a better field goal than Jokic, more points, same amount of rebounds, but slightly less assists. So the argument for Jokic is that he has the best record in the West and that he makes his teammates around him better. Giannis being the second seed is probably a bigger difference maker when determining, like, who's in, like, the brackets and, like, who's in not in the brackets, but who's in the MVP ladder and who's 1, 2, and 3. I feel like the seeding is definitely going to play a big role in this. Like, Giannis can make his teammates better, same way with Jokic, but it's just Jokic does it at a much, much better level than he does. The team also, the Bucks also aren't really getting that much hype around it. They still haven't really played to their full strength, in my opinion, and they're still a second seed. So if they start to figure it out with Giannis and go crazy, I mean, maybe they could make the race. Maybe he could make the race a bit closer. And you might be questioning why I haven't mentioned Shai. That's because, like, he averages crazy numbers, obviously, and crazy efficiency, but the numbers just aren't as crazy as Jokic and Giannis. Like, the overall production that Giannis and Jokic can bring to a team is just much more valuable to the overall production that Shai can bring to a team. Like, even though Shai is higher than Giannis right now, I still think Giannis should be higher than him in the ladder, simply because Giannis, there's nothing that Giannis can't do. There's nothing that Shai can do that Giannis can't do other than, like, really shoot the ball. But when you're averaging 31 points per game, do you really need to shoot the ball? Like, he's dominant enough to the point where he doesn't need to shoot the ball. And even if he decides to shoot the ball, like, he's still good enough to, like, make the shot from time to time. Like, obviously, it's not going to be consistent, but he gets high efficient shots in the paint, and in my opinion, it's a lot more valuable getting those type of looks and being able to create looks for other players than it is with Shai's game and being crafty and, like, creative on the offensive side of the floor. Like, the key is efficiency, like, for me at least. So that's why I would put Giannis over him. And not to mention, I forgot to mention that Giannis's defense is also, like, I know Shai's been a pretty good defender this year with his steals, but Giannis is just a much better defender overall. He can defend the rim, he can defend the perimeter. You already know this. He gets steals. He does all of it. He can do everything. So I feel like that gives him the slight edge for me in MVP voting because of the value that he can 100% bring to a team and the efficiency that he could bring to a team, because he could get to the paint with ease and he can create easy looks for the others. And I think that is much more valuable than Shai. So with that, we are out of time with this show. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and to please remember to tip and to donate in the display below the ticker and the link in the description. I am your host, Nelson. If you like this episode, please remember to follow us, to subscribe to our show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any type of app that carries podcasts. Please remember to subscribe, and as always, take care.